Hello everyone, I'm a tutor with UPlads and today we are going to learn about our SQL basics. We have already learned in our previous lecture about some aggregate functions, about group by, having, clause. We learned about updating our data. We could understand that why few commands are called DML commands because we were manipulating the data. We also have seen so many null handling strategies from our basic SQL querying. We dealt with some basic regular expressions as well, wherein we were concerned about using the like command, the in command, and the between clause of SQL. Today we are going to continue with some few more clauses that would be helpful for you to retrieve records based on some conditions. And to start with, we have exists command. So let us first try to check the basic table that we had created, uplads.persons. We have 6 rows in it, and we have another set of rows. We have another table, uplads.users, with 4 different unique records in it. That is 5 total records, 4 repeated twice. So now let's say my condition is to retrieve all the rows from uplads.persons where I have a matching condition on ID from uplads.users. So my query will look something like this. Select star from uplads.persons where exists. Select one from uplads.users. I'm selecting it from uplads.users and I am giving a condition of a.id, that is persons.id should be equal to users.id. Wherever there is a match between these two rows, these two columns, I will retrieve that data. So as you can see, there is a match for row ID number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I will retrieve, my output will be 4 rows from uplads.persons for ID equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was my output. Now, you must be thinking that we have 2 rows in uplads.users, but that is none of our concern because we are retrieving data from uplads.persons. And for 4, I found a record, more than one record in uplads.users. So my value exists clause will return true here and it will display this record in our output. So exist basically checks if this condition is present more than once or more than once in table B. If yes, then retrieve that row from the first table. So basic definition would be something like it is used to test for the existence of any record in a subquery. So this was our subquery. There was more than one record for ID equal to 4. So my exist clause returned true and hence that column was retrieved. Now, what if you want to add more than one conditions? That is also possible to do. That means if I want to retrieve only those records from uplads.persons, let's say I'm giving a condition on a last name and name. So what I do is I have given a condition on a.id equal to b.id and my another condition would be a.last name equal to b.name. So here only those records will be retrieved where both the conditions are satisfied. That is ID, there is a match for ID as well as there is a match for last name and name. So my query will look something like this. Select star from uplads.persons where exists clause. Select the column names on which you are applying the conditions, and my conditions will be in where clause in the subquery where a.id will be equal to b.id and a.last name will be equal to b.name. So as you can see from the tables, there is only one matching record, that is row number 1, ID equal to 1 and name equal to ABC. For the other records, the ID is matching, ID condition is matching, but the corresponding last name and name condition is not matching and hence those rows will not be retrieved. So what we finally get is that ID equal to 1, last name ABC, and that is my output. So that's how you can play with the exist clause by giving either one condition or more than one condition based on whatever the use case is. Now, moving to not exist. Not exist is basically exact opposite of exist clause. In exist, what happens is it checks if there is a match with the given condition. If there is a match, it will return true value. Similarly, for not exist, it will check if there are no matching records in table B. If there are no matching records in table B, it will simply retrieve that data. So as you can see in uplats.persons and uplats.users, for ID number 5 and 10, there are no matching records. And that is the reason my output of not exist will be record ID number 5 and ID number 10 row. If I run that, here is it. I get my output as expected. Now, just as you did in exists, what we can do is we can also add more than one condition to our query. If I, let's say, check on two conditions, that is on ID and on name, then in that case, both the conditions have to be satisfied. So let's say I give two conditions for not exist clause, one on ID and the other one on last name. So in this case, it will just check that if both the conditions are not satisfied, then it will retrieve that row. So all the rows except the matching condition, as you can see, only 1 and ABC is an exact match. Others are not an exact match. So ID 2, 3, 4, 5 and 10 will be retrieved in more than one condition. Let me execute that query. On executing, as you can see here, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 10 records are retrieved from my uplats.persons table. So that was not exists for you. Now moving to next is, let's say you want to create a backup of a table, where what you have done is, there are two ways to do this. Either you can manually create a new table by following the same structure as the old table, or you can use a like clause, which will help us create a same structure, which will help us duplicate that same structure to another table. The query for a same would be something like this: create table uplats.persons backup like uplats.persons. Okay, now what it will do is it will create a new table uplats.person underscore backup, and it will have the exact same structure as uplats.persons, including the constraints. So when I describe this both the tables, let me describe it for you. As you can see, the structure exactly matches along with the clauses. Here ID is the primary key, even here ID is the primary key. Why did that happen? Is because we are using this like command. So this saves a lot of time. Here, if you had created the new table manually by giving one column and defining its data type, that would take a lot of time when you're dealing with more than one table in a database. So we can use like command here. Now, just make sure that there's one thing you need to note, that is when you're using this like command, you're just creating another structure. That means uplats.person underscore backup is created similar to uplats.persons, but there is no data in uplats.persons underscore backup. We are yet to insert data into it. So if I do a count on both the tables, as you can see, uplats.persons has got 6 records, while uplats.person underscore backup has got 0 records. So that was like command for you. Now let me insert data into it. Now when I insert data into uplats.person underscore backup, there are two ways to do it. One is given here. The another one is manual way, where you are inserting into that table with mentioning individual values. You are inserting individual rows yourself. Now this will be a tedious process to do when you are dealing with big data, because in big data you have millions, crores of data, where you cannot manually insert each record while creating a backup. What an easy option could be, you can just insert into the new table, select all the columns, that is select star from uplats.persons. You can use this command. What will happen is whatever data is present in uplats.person until that instance, all the records will be inserted into this new table. Okay, so that is insert into command for you. Now you can also use this in your normal database creation time. What you have to do is that instead of star, you have to select the specific columns. Let's say this person underscore backup does not have a same structure as persons. In that case, you cannot directly use select star. You have to mention different column names that you want to retrieve from this table, but you want to insert into this table. Why not star? Because the structure for both the tables are not same. And that is why you cannot use select star. You have to specify each column name individually. And now when I go ahead and check the number of records in both the tables, they will be exactly same. So in select star, I have 6 records, and even in backup table, I have 6 records. So that means I have achieved what I wanted to. Now let us go ahead with our case when statements. Let's say I want to create some use case where if my age is less than 50, then it should print me a value saying that it is less than 50, because that is a more readable format. If some outside person is reading my data, they should easily understand that what exactly this data is trying to do. And what I do is I write a case one statement wherein if my age is less than 50, then print age is less than 50 in varchar format. Okay, so I write a case when statement something like this. Case when age is less than 50, then age is less than 50 should be printed. That means whenever my condition is satisfied, then this part will be executed. Whenever my condition is not satisfied, let's say for 100 is less than 50, this will yield Boolean value false. In that case, else value will be executed. So age is greater than 50 will be printed. Now, when you go ahead and execute this, you can see that, let us take age also along with it so that it becomes much better to read. So now you can see that for age 30, since 30 is less than 50, my condition was satisfied. And that is why my then part was executed, that is age is less than 50. Now, coming to 20, even in case of 20, 20 is less than 50. So age was, my condition was satisfied, my when condition was satisfied, then this part got executed. Coming to the fourth record, that is age equal to 100. Here what is happening, 100 is not less than 50. So this is false. So since this is false, don't execute this, go and execute the else part. Okay, so it will go and print age is greater than 50 for value equal to 100. That was case one statement for you. But since you must have seen something in this table, against null also it has printed age is greater than 50. Why did that happen? Is because null cannot be compared with any other value. But you are trying to compare null with 50 here. So if my null is less than 50, which is false because I don't know the value of null. So it will go ahead and execute the else part, that is age is greater than 50. So you can see that age is greater than 50 will be printed here against null, which is not the correct interpretation of data, because for null, we don't know what null is. We don't know the age of that person. So we should not conclude saying that it was greater than 50 or it was less than 50. We have to handle that in our case when statement. How we will do is that we will simply go and write one more condition here. Case when age is less than 50, then age is less than 50, printed the same way. But when age is null, then just print we don't know the age. Okay, else age is greater than 50. So now when I execute this, I get something like this. 30 is less than 50. So it got printed the same way. Age is less than 50. 20, that was right, since 20 is less than 50, my then part got executed and my age is less than 50 got printed. In case of 100, what happened? My 100 is greater than 50. Then this will fail. This condition will fail in case of 100. So it will go and check for the next condition. Here, my when age is null. Is 100 null? No. So it will escape this and it will execute the else part. That is not visible there. Sorry for that. But else part is similar to what I have written in the above query. It will go and execute the else part, where it will not check any condition. It will just print the value. Age is greater than 50. So for 100, you can see that age is greater than 50 got printed. Coming to null. In null, what happens is that it will first check, is null less than 50? No, that is false because null is not comparable. So it will move on to the next condition. If is my age null, that is true for this record. So it will say, then we don't know the age. So we have printed, we don't know the age. Okay, so that's how case when works. Always all the records in case when statement will check for every condition. From first when, it will check the second when, and finally get executed with else. So make sure that whatever case when statements you are writing is in an optimized format, so that not much of your operation time is utilized and not much memory is utilized. Because when you are dealing with big data, what will happen is every record, millions of records, will undergo this case when statement, and it will check for all the conditions starting from first when till last else. So this will utilize a lot of time. So it is important that you maintain your case when statement in you write a case when statement in an optimized format. So that was case when statement for you. Moving on to our next, that is null functions. We talked a lot about null functions, but we need to check that how do we deal with those null functions. There are null handability functions available in SQL. First is if null. So if you can see, I have passed two parameters. One is null and other one is 100. It printed 100. What is happening behind this clause is that if my first argument is null, then go ahead and print the second value. So since it found that first argument that I had passed was null, it will return the remaining part of the query. It will return the second argument of the query. So it returned 100 to me. Now, what if I pass 200 and 100? In this case, 200 is not null. So it will return the same value to me. So it will be 200. Assume that I'm passing both the null values here. What should basically happen is that if you are passing both the null values, then it will first check, is my first value null? That is true. So it will return the second null to me. So this null is basically the second null. It just checked if my first argument is null. If false, then return the first argument. If true, then return the second argument. That is the basic if-else condition behind the if null function. Now, we have one more function with us, that is coalesce. We have already used this function in our previous lectures. So let us try to deal with it. What coalesce does is that in coalesce, it will check if my first argument is a null function, then return the second argument. Now, in second argument, since second argument was an ordinal value, it returned 100 to me. What if I pass three arguments to it? Something like this, null, null, and then 100. What coalesce will do is it will work just like case when. When my first argument is null, then check for the second argument. Is my second argument null? True, then check for the third argument. Is my third value null? False, then it will return this value. False is the breaking condition. So as you can see, coalesce returned the last value which was not null to me. What if I pass three null values to it? In that case, it will work very similar to if null. As you can see, if I pass two nulls, it will return null to me. In this condition as well, I'm passing null and then null, and finally I'm getting a value. It will return 300 to me. If I pass three nulls for if null condition, then it will throw me an error saying that incorrect parameter count in the call to native function if null. Because if null is designed that way to deal with only two parameters. So whenever you are passing more than two parameters to if null, it will throw an error saying incorrect parameters. If you want to deal with more than two parameters, you have to use coalesce function. When I use coalesce function, as you can see here, I have passed values such as null, null, 300 and null. So according to how coalesce works is that whenever the condition becomes false, it will return that value. If my first value is null, true, then move to next argument. Is my second argument null? True. Move to the next value. Is my third argument null? False. Return that value. So it will return 300 to me. That's how coalesce works. So the main difference between coalesce function and if null function is coalesce deals with more than one parameters, more than one arguments, while if null deals with just two parameters, just two arguments. But the basic functioning behind them remains the same. Now you can also check whether your value is null or not. So let's say I have simply passed is null value here. Sorry, but yeah, if I have passed is null value here. Okay, it's null, is it null? True. So it will pass 1 to me. 1 means true. Is 200 null? That is false. So it will return 0 to me because 200 is not a null value. That's the way you can check your null functions, null values in your table, in your column. Now moving on to next is a very interesting concept that is string functions. it is very important how you deal with your string values, and it is very important that you understand your string functions very well, when to use it, how to use it. So we are going to look at various inbuilt SQL string functions available with us. We are going to demonstrate them one by one. And to start with, we are going to look at the char length, char underscore length. So for char underscore length, let's say I write a query something like this: select char length of uplats as length. So basically what it will do is it will go and count the number of characters. As you can see, there are 6 characters. It will return 6 to me. That was char length for you guys. Now there is one more function which works very similar to char length. That is length function. What will length do is it will do the same thing, provided the value that you are using is not unicoded. That is, it is not of a Unicode data type. It is not stored in Unicode format. It is a normal variable varchar format. So even length will return 6 to me. Now you must be wondering that why do we have 2 functions when both are satisfying, when both are giving the same result. The main difference between char length and length is that char length counts the number of characters while length counts the number of bytes. And you will see the difference in both of them when the column is stored in a Unicode format. So to do that, I have created one table, uplats.coursename, and I have inserted one row into it, and that row is SQL. So it has 3 characters, 1 word and 3 characters, S, Q, and L. Okay, now let me describe that for you. Course name, it has just one column, that is varchar 255 in it. Now when I go ahead and check the length of course and char length of course, it should yield same value to me, that is 3, which is true. And as I said, in terms of Unicode, let me modify that column. What I'm doing is I'm basically Unicoding it. So I have changed it from varchar 255 to varchar 255 Unicode. Okay. You will not see any structural change as such, but just the value inside the column has been Unicoded. So now when I go ahead and run the same query, what will happen is that length will count the number of bytes and char length will count the number of characters. So char length will remain unchanged because number of characters will not change in Unicoding. In Unicoding, you are changing the number of spaces you are allocating to that particular word. So if SQL is a 3-letter word and every letter is occupying 2 bytes. Okay. So what length will do is it will count the number of bytes. For S, there are 2 bytes. For Q, we have 2 bytes. And for L, we have 2 bytes. Summing it up, we have total 6 bytes occupied in our memory for the word SQL. So when I run that as expected, length has given an output 6, char length has given an output of 3. 6 means it is occupying 6 bytes. 3 is just the number of characters in that word. So that was the major difference between length and char length. So be very careful while you are using length and char length while identifying some data during some data analysis or trying to find out that what maximum length your data is occupying. Make sure that it is not unicoded. There are various ways that we'll discuss later in this course that how do we find out if it is unicoded or not. So that's the major difference between length and char length. So when you want to find out how many exactly characters are present in that word, I would suggest go ahead and use char length and not risk it with length because you don't know if it is unicoded or not. Now coming to our next interesting string function, that is concat. This you will see in majority of the data manipulation you have used this concat. And also let me tell you, concat is one important concept when it comes to feature engineering in machine learning. You will learn that when you take a machine learning course with UPLADS maybe. So you will learn more about it. What happens with concat is that it will try to sum up your features. Features in the sense columns. You have, let's say, 3 columns. You want to see data into one column itself. Concat will be used in such cases. So we have, let's say I want to, SQL is in one column, training is in another, with and similarly uplats. I want to see that all together in one column. I'd simply go ahead and concat it. But while concatenating, make sure that you are giving proper spaces. As you can see, after SQL, I have given single space. After training, I have given single space. That is because concat does not inbuilt understand the number of spaces that we need to give between our words. It will not understand that SQL and training are two different words. It will simply join it together without a space if I don't specify it here. So concat basically joins whatever you pass as an parameter. So make sure that if it is a sentence and you want only single spaces in between, then you have handled it well with your concatenation function. Now I have one table created for you guys so that this example may, this is just one example that how do we use concatenation. But when it comes to actual data, there is one scenario with me. There was one table, hotel bookings, wherein there were 3 columns available. One was arrival date year, then we had arrival date month in another column, and we had arrival date day of month in another column. I wanted to retrieve date from it. What I did was I added one more column to this table using alter table. I added one more table column to this table, and now what I did was I simply concatenated these 3 columns, and I have retrieved one common column which shows that this was the arrival date. Basically, they arrived on 2015 July, 1st of July 2015. This would have been difficult to read if I had 3 different columns. But now since it is in one column, it becomes very easy for me to read. This would be helpful to you when you are learning more about the feature engineering part in machine learning. This will be very helpful for you when you are doing a data analysis. So that was concatenation function for you. Now let us try to concatenate. As I told you that concat does not understand that how do we need to concatenate it. If I simply go ahead and concatenate arrival date year, arrival date month, and arrival date day of month, it will retrieve something like this: 2015 7 1. It will not input hyphen to it. That hyphen I need to give as a parameter, and that's when your date will be found. So make sure that whatever concatenation you are doing, it has proper spaces included, or hyphen included, or underscore included in it, because concatenation function does not understand words. It does not understand that these are 2 different words, and it needs to be separated by a space. You need to give it as a command to the concatenation function. So that was the final lapse of our today's lecture. We are ending here with string functions. In our next lecture, we are going to continue with more such string functions where you will be dealing with special characters. You will be dealing with spaces, that what if one column has different number of spaces in every row? How do we come over this issue? We will be dealing with that part, and many more string functions we will cover in our next video. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Thank you so much. And as per our ritual, this is our bye-bye message. Thank you from you, Plats. Stay connected.